explore. We're driving to Orlando, Florida, having ourselves a time, enjoying this thing called life, and enjoying a conversation about what marriage is ideally and some of the expectations we have that get in the way of marriage. How we looking over there? Okay.
It says online.
Yeah.
So.
You might have to exit out and then come back in, and silly things that they make you do. But hopefully, just seeing all this, we got a bus with a, what is that, Chevy Tracker driving by, and an actual truck, a big rig, not a little pickup truck like what I drive. Let them know they can come back in, but it's a beautiful day. So Jennifer,
Got wheel of death.
seriously, it says that we're good.
So maybe it's
Maybe it's just your phone. Okay, there we go. Hey, all right. So let's get into it. So we were talking about how you need good leadership, you need to be taught how to be a good leader, and then some other ideals about marriage. What do you got, my love?
I think a big one is to love the other person how they need to be loved.
Right.
Not loving people how you need to be loved and assuming that that's what they need as well.
Yes.
So, one thing that's been helpful for me is learning about the 5 love languages. And, figuring out which one I am.
Mm-hmm.
And understanding that I have in my life, until I learned that, have tended to give people gifts that were what I would want. Thinking that was the right thing to do, thinking that was, that they should be moved by this because I would be.
And then confused because they didn't enjoy it or like it.
Thought people were ungrateful,
Yes.
thought people were just, blowing me off. Like, what the heck? And so I got to where I hated giving gifts.
Mm-hmm.
I hated it. I got to where I hated getting them.
Yeah.
Because it was just a shit show.
And luckily, there's things like Amazon lists and things like that.
Yes.
We just did our Christmas party with our family. One of the things we use is an app so we can do a Secret Santa that's connected to Amazon lists, and so everyone gets to list out what they actually want.
Yeah.
And that way they get something that they want instead of trying to figure out, like, it's exhausting trying to figure out what each individual person wants. But that's part of marriage too. We're learning to understand what our spouse likes and what they want and what's important to them. And for those of you who've never looked into it, the 5 love languages are, I hope I can remember them all: physical touch, acts of service, gifts, quality time, and
Words of affirmation.
Words of affirmation, that's right. And usually people have one that's the most important to them, and then they also have a secondary one that's pretty helpful. I know for me personally, I don't like gifts. I don't like having a lot of stuff, and so when people give me more stuff, it's usually not. I try to be polite and say thank you and accept it graciously, but most likely it's going to end up in a donation station because I have the stuff I want. I'm a minimalist. I don't want to be responsible for extra stuff. On the other hand, I love hugging people and getting hugs from people. I really enjoy quality time. If you want to sit down with me one-on-one and have a great conversation, man, I'm all about it. All about it. And so that's one of the main reasons that I enjoy doing this with you, my love, because this is my love language. I feel loved. When we do Breaking Bible in the morning, that's our podcast. You can check that out. When that makes me feel loved. That lets me know that you love me. And after we get done with our podcast in the morning, we give each other a hug. I try to tell my wife some words of affirmation because, as far as I understand it, and please correct me if I'm wrong, my love, your primary is physical touch and your secondary is words of affirmation.
Yes, it is.
All right, excellent. And so that's something that we try to do after she shows me all the love by having a great conversation with me. I'm going to then reciprocate not by saying, well, we had a great conversation, she must feel loved. No. I'm going to give you a hug, give you some words of affirmation. We've already talked about what those words are. She told me what she needs to hear, and even though it didn't make any sense to me, it doesn't have to make sense. It's how she feels loved. So my job as her husband is to give her a hug, say the words she needs to hear, even if they don't make any sense to me, and that way she can feel loved. And that's how we do it. That's how you get that give and take, that back and forth of what each other actually needs. So you're right on. Oh, that's so good, baby, that you're talking about that as an aspect of the ideal marriage. And, you know, oh man, it's taken us 5 years to get to this place where we actually know each other's love languages. And I felt so silly. I felt so silly saying the words that you needed to hear. It just didn't. For me, I don't need those words. I don't need to hear that affirmation. I'm the kind of person, I've got a certain level of confidence that just, you know, it just makes me feel kind of silly when people affirm me. Now, I do want words of respect, but that's a whole different thing, and that's not necessarily about feeling loved. So it really, men, you're gonna have to die to yourself. You're going to have to pick your battles. And let me tell you, the battle that says your wife should feel loved just because you gave her what you like, woo, that's a dumb battle. Do not choose that as the battle to go fight, because you're wrong.
You talked earlier about knowing your spouse. Knowing your spouse is knowing what's good for them.
Yes.
Not what's good in the idea realm of marriage, or what you think is supposed to happen, or you think you're supposed to be doing, but what is actually good for them. And it requires a shit ton of communication.
And that's one of the most interesting parts of marriage, is when you shoot for the ideal marriage, the reward is that you feel safe, you feel loved, you feel respected, you feel like you're a valuable human being. And it gets so messed up because we shoot for the wrong ideals. So I think we built a pretty good idea of what marriage is. And if you want to be known by someone, if you want to feel like there's someone who cares about you, these are the things to shoot for in marriage, and it's something that you can get. But let me now talk about one of the main ways that we have an expectation that gets in the way of having a great marriage.
So this is what I would call the assumptions.
Yes. I feel like we've got a pretty good foundation.
Yeah.
So we're going to move into what is it that we want from marriage? We want to feel loved, understood, respected, cared about as an individual person. And most people don't have time to know us well enough to know how to love us. But the problem in a marriage is you can build to get to have someone who knows you well enough, but they're not going to be your best friend.
No.
So the very first assumption that makes a donkey out of you, an umption, makes a donkey out of you and me, and we've been here, I've been here for sure, is my spouse is supposed to be my best friend. We're going to go do everything together. We're going to enjoy the same hobbies. We're going to fill in the blank of what your best friend does. Let me tell you something. I can't be my wife's best friend. I don't want to shop at Hobby Lobby. I want to go surfing. She doesn't want to go surfing. She wants to go shop at Hobby Lobby. And that's okay. It's okay that we have different hobbies, different desires, different things that we enjoy. But if we expect this person to be our best friend, it's going to cause some real problems.
I think we need to back up even further from that.
Okay, all right, talk about it.
And it's the assumption or expectation that your spouse is supposed to fill every role for you emotionally.
Oh, there we go.
And so every role meaning they're supposed to be your best friend, they're supposed to be your lover, they're supposed to be your parent, they're supposed to be your confidant, they're supposed to be your buddy, all those things. And And there is no way humanly possible one person can do that. And I think, for me, I think that's the number one misguided expectation coming into marriage, because the other person will fail you.
Mm-hmm.
Every human will. Every human will. And I think about my son Nick when he went to college, and his coach told him, okay, you're going to want to do these 3 things. Like, you're going to want to be with your friends, you're going to want to do school, and you're going to want to do sports. And that may not be the order that they gave him, but basically gave him 3 things. And he said, you can only be great at 2 of them, not 3. And so I'm reminded of that every time I think about this whole, your spouse is supposed to fill every emotional role for you. It's just not possible.
Right.
And I know for myself, that was such a big expectation coming into this. I mean, I really dug deep into believing that. Go ahead.
So I put my hand up because one of the things we do in our marriage is this is how we let the other person know that we want to say something. We're actually saying the same thing.
Yes.
We're actually saying the same thing, but this is one of those things that people don't understand and we're not taught, is that for men, a friend is the most important thing. Friendship is that person who fills the loss that happens when you become an adult and you're no longer with your parents. They're not the ones looking out for you. Friendship is what men crave and pursue. One of the reasons the Lord of the Rings movies does so well for men is not just that it has all the action and the adventure, but it's a tale about friendship. It's a tale about self-sacrifice for the pursuit of friendship. And the movies, have to bring in all of these sort of romantic angles, but most of that isn't in the book. It's not talked about a lot in the book. And there's a really important reason for that. That's not what men aren't after these romanticized ideas of relationship. Men are after friendship. And friendship is shoulder to shoulder. We're moving out towards this vision of what needs to be done, or we're going to work together to do this thing. Yes, you can have enjoyment, like we all, like for me personally, most of my friendships have been built on we go surfing together. And that's a vision of a thing that we're going to accomplish. And then we go and we accomplish it, and after we do it, we'll sit down and talk story, we'll talk about what happened, and that's how friendship works. For men, it starts shoulder to shoulder, and after you do the shoulder to shoulder thing, after you've achieved the goal, then you can sit down face to face and have stories. And for women, it's, I think, the other way around, the exact opposite. After you've sat down and talked with each other and sort of built a relationship through having face to face, then you can go out and do things together. What do you think about that? Now, once again, we're still talking about ideally.
So, what do I think about the idea that men want shoulder to shoulder time?
No, I know I've told you that, and so you just believe me. What do you think about women want face-to-face time? Or women, it's easier for women to build relationship with what we're calling face-to-face time. Doesn't necessarily mean you're sitting there staring at each other, but
Right.
It does generally mean you're sitting together, and usually you'll be at least somewhat facing each other.
Yes.
It's definitely not like you and me are right now. Right now, we're shoulder to shoulder. We're traveling towards something. This is man time.
Yeah.
But if you wanted to feel connected to somebody,
Yeah.
you would need to turn a little bit so that you're facing them a little bit more.
Exactly.
And the closer the friendship is,
Yeah.
on the one hand, it'll have more of actual face-to-face, like actually face-to-face, but there's also a comfort that allows you to be less face-to-face. So it kind of starts with moving towards face-to-face, and then there's more space once it's comfortable to not be totally face-to-face. But that's the point. You have to build that first. And that's how women build relationships. Is that accurate, do you think? Or is that totally crazy? what do you think about how women build relationships?
That's absolutely accurate.
Okay.
We generally we want to see your face. We want to see your emotion. We want to be able to read your body language.
Mm-hmm.
We need that connection. That feels connected to us.
Right.
I'm thinking about one of my great friends, Tian, and we would go places, and so we'd be in the car, and that always felt like so
Disconnected.
yeah, kind of awkward when we would ride places in the car.
Sure.
Versus when we were just sitting in our living room having a good chat.
Yes.
And when we'd go to do things, even we'd go to the mall, we'd go shopping or whatever, I always liked when we stopped for lunch better because we'd be face to face.
Right. Exactly.
I totally agree with you.
There you go. So here's one of the problems with marriage. A man comes into the marriage and wants to do stuff together to build the relationship. And a woman is upset because in order to build a relationship, you sit down and talk to each other face to face.
Yes.
But a man doesn't want to sit down and talk face to face until you've done something together.
Yes.
And a woman thinks, no, we don't get to go do stuff together until we sit down and
Yes.
talk. And so there's this tension and this misunderstanding. And what's really heartbreaking is the only reason we know this and can talk about it is because we've been married for 5 years, just struggling against each other. The tension of how men and women live on opposite sides, and this dichotomy of what is most important and what needs to happen first.
Absolutely.
And I've talked about this a lot. God is in the center. God is neither male nor female. God is that center point that doesn't get pulled in either direction. And we, as human beings, are made in His image, but we're fallen. So we've fallen off to the side, to the outside of the circle where all of these dichotomies are: clean and dirty, light and dark. All of this different ways of interacting with the world. And we have to die to ourselves because we tell ourselves that our way is the right way.
Yes.
And the other person needs to do it our way, and then we'll have a good relationship.